Hello YouTube. That was Joachim Andersen's Etude number 2 from his 18 studies in Opus 41. And we're going to talk a little bit about some of the things that I think about when I'm playing this particular etude. So when I first look at an etude, what I try to think about is what is challenging about this etude? What should really get the focus of my attention? And I try to identify maybe 2 or 3 things that I really want to think about on any particular etude when I'm playing it. The rest of the things I kind of put on the back burner. I don't ignore them completely, but they're not the focus of my attention. Not to worry, Andersen wrote lots of etudes. Whatever I've put on the back burner, it will come to the front burner sooner or later. Not to worry about that. But I want to be really focused on just some certain ideas for a particular etude. So for this particular etude, there are 3 things that I really think about and I really study and work on. The first one is the wide intervals. That's obviously a challenge throughout this entire piece. And if you listen to particularly that middle section where the harmony gets a little more interesting, we have some interesting major 7ths, minor 6ths, just some wide leaps that we don't always play. For example, right at the end of that section, you have this. When you listen to all of those intervals, some of them might surprise you when you hear them more slowly. When they go by quickly, we don't always pay attention to exactly where they are, but suddenly when we play a little bit slower and give those notes more length, we can hear exactly where that high note is and where that low note is, instead of just approaching them like, oh, there's a note and it's way up high here somewhere. Well, no, it's at a specific spot. And we want to train ourselves to know exactly what that spot is. So I find for myself, I can usually find that spot a little bit better if I repeat it more than one time. So what I've done on this etude is I will take 2 notes, and I'm going to start in that second section since that has some of the more interesting things in it. I play 2 notes and I play those notes twice. So the first 2 notes of this section are A and D sharp. And you can hear I'm slurring them. That's so that I have to go from one to the other and I have to really hear where those pitches are and get them right away. After I play those 2, I'm going to go on to the next 2. So the D sharp that I ended on to the F sharp. Next 2 notes, F sharp to C and C to B. And I'll continue practicing in that fashion. I generally put 4 sets of notes together, then I stop and take a break. Just like this. And by the way, going from the 4th note to the 1st note is probably the most important interval to practice, and you just heard why. That's where some of the really enormous intervals happen. So you want to make sure you don't neglect that. Don't just end on that high E and then start again on that low G. That's cheating and you'll regret it later. So practice that part too. So the first thing I do to get to know the intervals is I play them slurred, I play them connected, and I repeat them so that I can really get them in my ear as well as in my fingers. And so on, just like that. So I take small enough groups that I can work through them accurately, but large enough that I get a feel of the airflow and the changes that need to happen for those intervals. So the intervals are the first challenge that I think about with this etude. The second one obviously is the articulation, and along with that I think comes breathing. The 2 kind of go hand in hand to me for this etude. So the challenge with the articulation is that we have these staccato dots the entire way through. And at first glance, it looks like there's nothing but 8th notes, and so there's nowhere to breathe, and that's very, very difficult. However, when I see a lot of staccato 8th notes, depending on the tempo, often I see a lot of places to breathe, as in between every single note. So this is a different type of breathing than you may be used to. If you're used to filling up your lungs and then playing until there's no air left, this is going to be a very different approach for you. So basically what I do throughout this one is I will take only enough air to play one staccato note. So it's not a big suck in the world of air type of breath. It's just a tiny little breath. Because I play my one note, and then guess what? I can take another teeny tiny little breath. So I'm getting just a tiny bit of air between each note, but it's enough air for me to play the next note, and that's all that I need. So most of the way through this etude, I'm employing that style of breathing. And as a result, I never really have to stop and get a big breath of air, which allows it to have sort of that perpetual motion kind of feel to it. So the other thing that allows it to have this perpetual motion feel is actually the third thing that I think about, which is phrasing. Again, we're looking at an etude that is nothing but eighth notes the whole way through. It looks, quite frankly, kind of boring to the eye. But hidden in there are some really nice phrasing ideas that you need to find as a player and that you need to bring out to your listener. So to me, for this piece, what I really think about is the notes going 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. So the first eighth note of a group of 4 is not the beginning of an idea, but it's the end of the previous idea. And that gives us a specific challenge for the very first note, because the first note is really the end of a phrase that you never played, right? So it's not a weighty note, but it's rather a light, kind of sitting back and kind of resolved note. It's just right there. So you just play it, there's not much to it, but you're really focused on the second note of this etude, which starts the next full phrase. And then here we are in the downbeat again. Again, that note doesn't have a lot of weight. I'm kind of backing off of it. The other thing that you may notice is that I'm sort of pushing through the first four notes, and then I'm sort of backing off the last 4. So one is pushing forward, one is pushing back, sort of like ocean waves. They come in and then they go back out. They come in and then they go back out. And so on. So that's one concept. So to help me feel that phrasing, I actually changed the rhythm of this, and it becomes this. And so on. So that rhythm change really allows you to feel 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. That feeling that 2 goes to 1. The other thing it does is it gets rid of that breathing problem for a while. Suddenly you have plenty of places to breathe. So that's a great way to start working on this one, to get the feel of that rolling phrase, to eliminate that breathing problem, and then once you're comfortable, you can add that breathing problem back in later. And so on the rest of the way through the etude. So I hope you found some helpful hints in this tutorial. If you like what you hear, I invite you to subscribe to my channel, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.